Good evening, and welcome to Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and I'm excited to be with you tonight. And we have a guest who will introduce herself shortly. And I promise that it is going to be a good time as always. And I look forward to shortly. And I promise that it is going. And there we go with a technical glitch, which, happens sometimes, but it's okay. We'll get through it. So, good reason to breathe right now. If you've been here before, you know that we start every show with some deep breaths, some deep cleansing breaths. Why? It allows your mind and body to relax. And it's something if you do now, you can practice later on too. If you have a stressful day, a stressful moment, you're sitting in traffic, you're standing in a long line at the grocery store and you really can't afford to leave the stuff there because you have to have it. And it's going to take you a long time and stress starts to build. It can start to build at any time. You can do some of this deep breathing. It can calm you down. So here's what I want you to do. If you've never done it with us, put your hands on your stomach. And when I say breathe in, you're going to breathe in so deeply you will feel your stomach expand, because that means your breath is not going just in your chest, it's going all the way down to the bottom of your lungs. So when I say breathe in, I'll do a slow count of 4 and you'll breathe in slowly. Then I will say breathe out and you'll exhale to the same slow count of 4. We'll do this 3 times. Let's get ready. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Well, Reverend Angela, how did that feel for you?
Bronwyn, that's awesome.
Great.
I'm feeling much more at ease right now. I love that. Thank you for that.
You are welcome. And that is why we do it. And that's what I say. If you're in a long line, you're sitting in traffic, just stop, take 3 deep breaths, and they can change your life.
It is amazing. When people say just breathe, that means that's everything.
Yes. God made it simple. Just let us breathe.
That's it.
Well, tonight we are talking about voting. Every week when I do my call to action, I say, be an educated voter. And I've been saying I'm going to, we're going to have a show just about that, how to be an educated voter. What does that mean? I say it all the time. And as an educator, I believe I need to tell you what I mean. So tonight, I have Reverend Dr. Angela Raven Anderson, and she is my expert on social justice and on all things voting. Reverend Dr. Angela, introduce yourself.
Hi, Bronwyn. It is such a delight to be with you again and in this space. I am, as you say, actively involved in social justice. I am one of the leaders for our social justice ministry at our church, and we are always very, very active, particularly when it comes around voting and looking at legislation that's going to impact our communities. So, and I agree with you. We have been in a season of trying to educate voters so that when you go to the polls that you are confident about how to vote, who you're going to vote for, all of those things, and the voting process, because there have been a lot of changes. There have been a lot of changes because of the recent laws, particularly for us here in Texas, that have changed. So this is very important, that we want people to understand the process as we get closer to the November election.
We are coming up to the November election, and People can say, you hear all the time, it's one of the most important elections. We say that
Yes.
all the time, but why is this election so significant, in your opinion?
Oh, in my opinion, I honestly believe, I do not think this is a hyperbole at all. I fully am convinced that this is a pivotal moment in the history of this country. I feel that if we are not able to maintain some level of majority in the federal elections, we are going to begin to see our country, our democracy move really from democracy to oligarchy. And that is where power resides in just a few and is usually based on money. And in a lot of ways, we're kind of there. But and that's why I feel like this point in the election is very critical for us to be continue to be a government of the people and for the people.
Mm,
Yeah.
good point. There's so many issues when we think about voting this year, this time. What do you think is one of the key issues we should look at just here in the state of Texas?
Well, for us, I- with the passing of SB 1 last summer, during the legislation, when we really experienced what we've been calling a um, Jim Crow 2.0 in full effect here in Texas. And so a state that was already very restrictive as far as
Mhm.
allowing people access and the ability to vote. And that's become even harder and even more complex, a much more complex process. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is making sure that people are registered to vote and that they know where they're going to vote, because there's some people who may we saw in um, the primaries, kind of it gave us a glimpse of the impact of SB 1, where we saw up to what 20% here just in Harris County, almost 20%, I think it was 19% of mail-in ballots were rejected. And the
Mhm.
majority of those were in neighborhoods that came from zip codes and precincts that were primarily Black and brown. And so it is a very intentional effort to disqualify our votes and our voices. So for us, I really think it extremely important that voters are aware of the tactics that are being utilized to do that, and to again prepare themselves and make sure that their vote will count, that their vote will count. I know the Democratic Party here in Houston has a program called Voter Protection Program that really seeks to help voters understand how to make sure that their vote, when they go, that they can go vote, and when they vote, that their vote will count. And so it is very important. It's incumbent upon all of us to take that personal responsibility to make sure that our vote will count in this midterm.
I wanted to back up. In the beginning, you mentioned SB 1, and
Yes.
I know some of my listeners are not savvy on anything voting because who needs to? Why bother?
Mhm.
Could you say what SB 1 is?
Well, SB 1 was a was a bill that was passed in Texas under the pretense of making the vote more secure, as if to say that there was voter fraud in Texas, when, in all honesty, under all the reports, even from the state attorney general's office, there has been no election fraud in Texas. There has not been there. It's not under question at all. However, this law was passed to make it more difficult to vote. So many of the things that we saw in the previous election that were available were done away with. And many of those things were things that were done here in Houston to allow greater access. There were more polling locations. The times were extended. We had some times that were almost, that went into midnight, so that people who worked evening shifts or night shifts, that they could still be able to go and vote. And so SB1 did away with a lot of that. It also made it difficult if you are ride sharing to the poll. There's a requirement that if you take more than, I believe, 4 people, you have to register that you are taking people to the polls. But what's interesting about that is that law was passed, and yet no process was put into place during the primaries to even allow for that. So if I had a group of people that I wanted to take, or if I were taking multiple, let's say seniors, I was picking up people and taking them to the polls. Um, the idea is that I would have to register to do that. All of these things were just hurdles that were added to make voting more complicated, not easier, to limit access. The amount of places where you can take ballots has been greatly reduced. So once you have your ballot, you used to be able to take your drop off your mail-in ballots at certain, there were different locations. Well, now in a city as large as Houston, I think we have either 1 or 2 places right now that you can take that ballot. So, there's a lot of things, and even the application process for mail-in ballots, and who can, being able to have drive-through voting. Some of those things that were implemented during the pandemic that made it easier for folks to be able, again, to access the polls and vote, because we're a democracy. So we should want people to vote. We should want people to participate in the process. But again, these laws have been enacted to create barriers and to make it harder for people to show up at the polls.
And that is true. And so often you get people who will think, you know what, it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's got to go through all that. I won't do it. Well,
Right, exactly.
we both disagree with that, but yes, that is a common thought. When you look at that, I know in some cities, and I'll ask about Houston, they're talking about purging the rolls.
Oh, yes.
What
Yes.
what exactly is that, and how is that impacting voting?
Well, it's interesting because the Attorney General at any time, this is something that I've learned recently, at any time can give direction to say, purge the rolls based on whatever criteria he sets forth, right? Or that person in that position sets forth. Recently, we've come across on the rolls a designation of suspense, not suspended, not the word is suspense. And when we began to do some investigation around this suspense category, there's a myriad of ways an individual might end up in a suspense category, but it is a way of purging the rolls, because if you are to show up on election day and you happen to be in this category, you will not be allowed to vote.
Will you know if you're in the suspense category necessarily?
The only way that you will know that is if you go in and check. You have to go in, and you can go to vote.org, I believe, or there's another group called that's doing an initiative called Heal the Vote. And you can go to their website and enter your address and information, and they'll pull up and let you know that you can, if you are registered, and if you are in an active category. And just to give you a sense about this, in one zip code, we found 15% of the registered voters in one zip code were in a suspense category.
Which means they could not vote.
Which means they can't vote. Now they
may not know it.
And may not know it. Now, some of this has to do, some people find themselves in that category if there's some issues with their mail, like their address is changed and they haven't updated. But also, if you have not voted in the last 2 federal elections, then you're put into that category. There are a myriad of reasons apparently that folks are being put into that category, but again, not being told, not known.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that we're saying is that even if you are a registered voter, even if you have your voter registration card, you need to go in and check and make sure that you are in an active status, and if you are not, uh you probably need to go and get registered again.
So that active status and go in and check means you can go online
Mhm.
to the county clerk or the voting, yeah, I think it's the county clerk's office who does the
Yes,
voting.
yes.
And no matter what city you're in, you can go to the county clerk's office and you can check your voter registration status because you may think all is fine. Or
Right.
as she said, if you haven't voted in 2 years, they could put that tag on you and you think, well, now I'm ready. I'm going back and I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to vote.
Right.
And you find out you can't.
Right.
So,
And it's the office of the elections administrator for whatever area that you're in. That's just go to that website. They'll have a place where you can check to make sure that you are still eligible, that you are in an active status to be able to vote. And we are strongly encouraging individuals to do that.
when is the last day to register to vote? Do you know that? Since we were telling them to
It
go.
is, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to know these dates. I know that it is in October.
Mhm.
Hold on. If we keep talking, I'm gonna give it to you in just a minute.
Okay, and the reason I was saying that, so if there's anyone out there who you're now thinking, well, maybe I do want to register to vote, or I'll go check. You might need to know when. I can't remember. I'll let her check. We need to know when that date is. So you can push your family, friends, neighbors, coworkers to register to vote.
Yes,
But we do need to know it's a finite time.
yes.
Um, and we'll get that before we end tonight. We'll have that. Because you don't know if you could be one of the people that's slated to be purged off a roll, or technically you're purged off the roll if you're in that sense category.
It's the date is October 11th, so we are less than a month out
Mhm.
for getting registered. So we are, if you are not, you can, if you register by mail, it has to be postmarked by October 11th, or your registration application has to be in the office by October 11th. So there's lots of push going on. In fact, September 20th will be a kind of national registration day, voter registration day. And we are having at our church a voter education workshop on that day, as well as voter registration going on. So there are events all over the city. I'm sure the same is true in Dallas and Houston. There are opportunities and places to register to vote on that day, but you don't have to wait till the September 20th. You could go vote. You can go get registered today. So
Right.
I say do not wait. Go get it done today.
It is important to do that. And we will say that date again before the night is over. We'll say it several times because it's
Yes.
important to know when. We've kind of talked about some of the things that are hindering, but let's go to the other side. Another term that people don't fully understand, I think, is midterms. You hear, oh, there's a midterm election. So what is the significance of midterm elections?
Well, one of the things that we have to understand is our those who are in the House of Representatives, their terms are only 2 years. So every 2 years, there are the members of the House come up for reelection at the state and at the federal level every 2 years. Midterm refers because our federal election for our president obviously is every 4 years. So the midterm is that 2 year break in between that federal election. Now, unfortunately, because a lot of people are like, well, it's not the president. Those aren't important people. Those are very important elections because it's in those midterms that the powers can shift in the Senate and in the House. So you have to pay attention to what's going on during those midterm elections. And that's why this particular midterm is so important. We were able to, as Democrats, to get a majority of seats during the last election. However, that majority could go away if we don't show up to the polls again. We need to come out just like we did during the last election, during this midterm, to ensure that we hold on to this majority. In fact, there's an opportunity, if we show up the way that we did before, that we could even gain greater ground to be able to move forward some legislation that is helpful for our communities.
We've talked before about this. How do you know what's on your ballot? So I am going to show
Yes, that's very important.
the League of Women Voters. I've
Yes.
talked about it before. I say, go there, but I want to show you. So I'm going to, we got to remember how to share the screen. Well, here it is while I'm on Zoom. And
Right.
let's get the right screen.
And Roman, I just want to encourage people to access League of Women Voters, because they provide you, when we talk about being an educated voter, a lot of times we may not take the time to really find out what candidates stand for, and what positions they have. And the League of Women Voters, they do an incredible job of gathering that information, and for all the candidates. And they send out questionnaires to them, and they publish their answers, the response of the candidates. And it really gives you some insight as far as who those people are that are running for the positions, and what their views are, and if their views are in alignment with what you believe we need for our community.
Right. And they have, both parties are represented on here. And I have a personal bias that if a candidate did not answer the question, I don't even consider them.
Right.
I don't care what you
Exactly.
look like even. If you did not take time to answer this, I don't know what you think. So I'm not going to vote for you. So this is League of Women Voters website, and it shows Vote 411. And you can also go to vote411.org. And you're going to get this information. So it talks about some of the things you're going to see is voting rights. And it has the different expanding voter access, redistricting, and we might talk about that a little. Money in politics, fighting voter suppression. So you can read about that and find out what's going on nationally in that area. Elections, educating voters. When you look at the educating voters, it talks about why voting matters, what the league is doing, and it has several links to it. It's just a way to really educate yourself. We're going to go to Vote 411 in a minute, and then it has other issues that are prevalent, like healthcare reform, the environment, the census, immigration, and then information about the league itself, because we keep telling you to look at this, but this will give you the history. It'll tell you about who's there, and you get a chance to really look at it. One of the things you can do when you go to Vote 411 is you can put in your information, and it will pull up a ballot. It'll pull up the ballot, and it'll show you view all Texas races. You put in your address and zip code, and this comes up. And this is the ballot. You're going to see it for Tuesday, November 8th, 2 months from today. Not a lot of time. 2 months from today, it will be time to vote. And you can click on Get Started, and you can find your polling place. You can, I'm trying to be, this is going to have all the races, and this tells you how to do absentee voting and things like that. I'm looking, first-time voter information. Check you can register to vote and check your voter registration. You can also do from here.
Yes. And so those two are both very important. And that first time voter checklist is important as well, because that way you know exactly what it is that you need to take with you when you go to the polls, and the things that you need. We always say when it comes time to vote, you need to have a plan. You need to know what day you're going to go on. You need to know where you're going to go. When it says see what's on your ballot, you want to look at that voter guide. And because you can't take your phone with you into the voting booth, but you can take a piece of paper. You can take the voting guide so that you already know and you've already picked out who your candidates are going to be. And that helps you as well with the process, because sometimes in these elections, depending on the number of folks that are running in the local elections, your ballots can be quite lengthy. So you want to make sure that you vote all the way down that ballot, because we always say the further down the ballot you get, the closer to your door. In other words, the further down that ballot, those people are local and they are going to have an immediate impact on policies and regulations and procedures that are being enacted that will affect you in your neighborhood. So it is important to vote all the way down the ballot. And this voting guide really helps you begin to understand who's running for what position again and see what their platforms are.
And I looked, it's not up yet. It says
Okay.
it'll come closer to the election because I wanted to show you, but it will have every race, every person. If there are propositions, they're there. And what's good about it, a lot of times when you read the different propositions, they're written in language where you don't understand. It's like, am I for or against?
Yeah.
Because it'll say it not do something. So does not mean it does do it, and the language can be just that confusing.
Yes.
And on this site, it's going to have a definition of what the proposition is. It's going to have what the different each candidate in each race.
Again, talking about being an educated voter, that's important to understand those propositions, because sometimes you can read them and you think, well, what would be wrong with that? Just as we were talking about voter security, what's wrong with voter security? But when you begin to get down into the details of certain bills, certain propositions, understanding their real impact in the community, then it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that isn't in our best interest. So it is very important on those propositions to really understand the potential impact for your community.
And that comes from really reading it thoroughly.
Yes.
One of the things I do, I have a friend who we'll get the voter's guide, we're on the phone, and we will go through each one. And we're in different cities, but we will listen to each other's because we'll help the other one vote. When you're looking at propositions, for instance, no, we don't want that. We don't have that. But definitely the candidates you go through. And even if you think, I know who I want, you go back and read. And sometimes in an election, you end up voting for the lesser of two evils.
Yes.
You have to know which is the lesser of two evils. There might be two candidates that I don't like any of them.
Neither one, right?
But okay, I can deal with this one over here because I can't do this. But you will know that because you have read, you have studied, you have looked into it. So
and
that's why
I have to say that this is really, there was a time when you could vote a straight ticket, right? You could just vote a straight Democratic ticket. Well, we cannot do that anymore. That's been taken away. Again, this was part of the process of trying to disenfranchise individuals from the voting process, that people would say, oh, it takes too long, it's too much. But I can say one of the benefits of that is, again, if you will take the time and look at the guide and look at the candidates and really decide, does this seem to be someone who is supporting what I believe is important? And you can begin to assess each candidate for their own value and that they're bringing to the value proposition that they're bringing to the table.
And they're going to tell you about them. You learn about them personally. Things like where they went to school, and some of them, those are some of the questions, or just some general things. And then they're policy questions, and each
Yes.
one is asked the same question. They're given the same questionnaire, and you can compare side by side. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it can take time. I will say that, but it does say it'll be up in a couple of weeks as it gets closer to the election, and they're probably still gathering,
Yeah, I
information
think
from
they're trying to
candidates.
do the last of the kind of I think
Do a few runoffs.
yeah, and there were some write-ins or some or not write-ins,
Mhm.
but some folks who can submit at the last minute if they're wanting to run for an election. So I believe they had till the middle of August or the end of August to do that. So they're
Mhm.
probably just kind of uh, uh, collating all of that information.
Right, so they'll have to get everything in, but it's definitely worth your time. You can pull it up, and you used to be able to get a hard copy of it, because I can remember,
Hmm.
go and get my copy and highlighting, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
Uh,
You
but
can. There are some places that have the hard copy, but again, it's online,
mhm,
or or you can print it out
read it
once you,
yourself. Mhm.
yeah. And I did the exact same thing for my father. My father's 90 years old, and when he went to vote this last time, before he went to vote, we sat down and kind of went through the whole list, and then that way, when it came time for him to vote, he had his list, and he could go through and just tap on the way down. He could find the list of the name of the person that he was looking for, and then he could go find them quickly on the ballot and select them. So I strongly encourage individuals to take your ballot with you, print out you a sample ballot, go through it, and make your selections prior to you going into the actual voting booth. It will make you feel much more confident in the process. Especially after you have, again, like you said, reviewed each candidate and understand where they stand on the issues.
You mentioned that your church is doing some things on September 20th, and I know you have a whole social justice ministry. So, what are some things you're doing that our listeners might think that, maybe we could do that? So, what are some things you guys are doing in the community?
Well, we are also hosting a candidates forum, actually on September 17th. It's a Saturday. We're co-sponsoring this with the alumni chapter for Delta Sigma Theta, and it will have candidates from all levels, federal, state, and local, will be present and will allow individuals opportunities to pose questions to them. Again, I mentioned on the 20th, that Tuesday evening, we will also have a it's a hybrid. So if no matter where you are, if you're in Dallas or Houston or wherever, you can join in. Just go to the church website. You can see how to get the link to hear the information that'll be presented then on voting, and we'll be discussing things like voter eligibility. We'll be talking about poll watchers, because there have been some changes in legislation related to poll watchers, what they can and cannot do.
Will you tell them what a poll watcher is?
So a poll watcher is an individual who can, um, who is there really to monitor the process. It is a citizen who can come into the voting place and they can monitor what's going on. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes with poll watchers is their purpose in history often has been to be those who intimidate voters. And so there are guidelines around how many poll watchers can be in a precinct. There are guidelines about how close they can get to the voters, um, and all of those things. So part of this workshop will really talk about the role of a poll watcher. And even if you're interested in being a poll watcher, I would encourage that, because typically you will have um, for instance, if you're in a precinct that's predominantly a Democratic precinct, right? You may have Republican poll watchers come in, and if they're not aware of the guidelines and following the guidelines, they may again try to do this intimidation with their presence, either coming up too close to people or maybe saying things or telling people things that they shouldn't be. So one of the things we really want individuals to be aware of is what a poll watcher can and cannot do in as this is going on now. And again, I can tell you each of the parties generally have poll watchers that are there. And anybody can be trained to be a poll watcher, but this is the other piece that was very interesting in the legislation. There's no standard training, and there's no requirement for training necessarily. But you can go and say that you are a poll watcher. So there's some very interesting components to that are coming about now. So I want people to be aware of those kind of things. But again, this hybrid, this voter, it's a hybrid workshop because you can either be in person or you can view and participate via Zoom online and hear the information. And I strongly encourage individuals to come out and to hear that. There'll be some information given also about ADA assistance that you can expect if you need that. What does that look like, and how do you go about securing that? Just several different topics, and even that we'll be talking about this issue with checking to make sure that you are registered and dealing with the suspense category. So we're excited to be able to host this event for the community.
You have not told us the name of your church. You said go to the website. What website? Who are you? What's the name?
Go to Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. Our website is wheelerbc.org. Wheeler, WHEELERBC.org. You can go there and go under the events tab, and you will find the virtual voter workshop. Yes. You. I can't believe I said that. My pastor's gonna get on me.
Yes, we kept saying the church this, the church that, and what church is that? So that's Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, and they do a lot. It's a church in Houston who has been involved in social justice ministry since the inception of the church.
Yes. I am so proud. Our pastor emeritus, Reverend William Lawson, truly was part of the civil rights movement, working alongside of Dr. King when many other pastors would not affiliate with him. He did, and really became the leader for the Houston operation of the movement. And our current pastor, Dr. Marcus D. Cosby, he also continues that tradition of us standing in the gap with our community, working with the community, trying to make sure that we are addressing those areas where we see systemic injustice occurring. And our church is a polling site, is a voting site. So really excited about that.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know where we can get that information.
So sorry.
No problem. I said, if she doesn't say it this time, I'm going to. You don't know.
You know how that is when you just think, oh yeah, you just know. Anyway.
Yeah, I talk all the time. They know who I am. They know where I'm from. No, they don't. But as she said, even if you aren't in Houston, there is information you can gain from attending virtually on just being an educated voter. It is,
and that workshop begins at 6:30. It will begin at 6:30 that Tuesday evening, September the 20th. And we'll go from 6:30 to 8, I believe, is the time frame.
So it'll be a good time to get some information. As I look at the clock, it's about time for us to wind down.
Oh, wow.
As I said, my purpose tonight was to put information in your hands about voting, to have people understand and just look at some different things you may not know. And again, there's at vote411.org or the League of Women Voters. And you can pull it up and read through.
Please.
And
please.
when the ballots actually come, wait about 2 or 3 weeks. You can go back or just keep checking. And when they're up, I will let you know on this show because I'll keep checking and I will say, hey, it's up there. You can go back and look. If I encourage everyone, and so this is really my call to action since I always end with that, check your voter registration status. The
Yes.
last day is, it was it October 11th?
October 11th. That is the last day to register to vote.
If you're mailing it in, it has to be postmarked by October 11th. I would recommend if you're going to do it, you don't want to do it past the 10th. You want to make
Yes.
sure, you go drop it in and whatever. No,
Mhm.
you would not want to go past the 9th or 10th to
Right.
make sure it's in it. Yes.
And Roman, I would also want to say now, yes, there is an opportunity to do absentee voting or mail, the vote by mail.
Mhm.
But we are really encouraging people based on these numbers of rejection. We're really encouraging people to do early voting, to go, the 8th is election day, but would go out during the time of early voting. That way you kind of miss some of the large crowds that happen on that day. We've seen the news where people are in line way past the 7 o'clock hour. Go during early voting. I think that that's going to be our most secure way to ensure that our votes are counted and we get to vote. So take advantage of that early voting time. That is my charge to folks is and go with a plan. Know the date, know the place, and take a friend when you go. And take your ballot with you so you know who you're going to
Yes.
vote for.
And another thing I will say about early voting, you never know what's going to happen on any given day. So
Right.
let's say you wait to election day and you wake up and your car battery is dead,
Mm-hmm.
or it is just it's the end of hurricane season, so it could be a hurricane coming. I mean,
Right.
literally, and they would make accommodations for that, or it could just be really bad weather, and there's no accommodation for that. I'm just saying, so many things can happen, and you could just wake up ill that day and can't get out of bed ill. So
Right.
when you wait to the very last moment for anything, I'm just not a proponent of waiting to the last minute for anything that is important.
Right.
So early voting gives you the option to say you have a window of voting. And you have the option to say, I'm going to get this done. I'm not going to wait because anything can happen that day. You just
Absolutely.
can't predict
Absolutely.
it. So
Absolutely.
vote early. I'm too am a big proponent of just go do it. Vote
Yeah.
early. You
Get it
know it's
done. Let's
done.
go. And like I said, make a party out of it. Get your
Mhm.
girlfriends, get your fellas, y'all go do the civic duty of taking care of your vote and then go hang out for the rest of the day. Have brunch, whatever.
Good
But
idea. Have a
but
voting party.
a voting party. That's what we like to
And early
have.
voting, you're not restricted to a specific poll. So just go have a voting party and
That's
you
it.
all go out to brunch and
That's it. Have a great time.
drink, whatever, but go out and have fun.
That's it.
Make it an event. Make
Yes.
voting an event.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Is there any final comment you'd like to make?
Well, again, I mean, we've said it over and over that this is a very critical election season. And so I just, again, want to encourage every single one of um, the folks that are viewing this show to make voting this time a priority. Again, a lot of times we overlook midterm elections. We think, well, the president's not running, so it's not that important. This election is critical. It is crucial. In the state of Texas, we have a lot, our governor, our attorney general, and that whole crew, they are up for election. And it is time for us to go and make some changes in this state. I want you guys to remember some things, the problems that we had with the ice
Power
storm
grid.
and the
Mhm.
power grid. We've had issues with our governor not wanting to accept money for our children for Medicaid and for their care. We've had issues with our governor not wanting to support and be a part of this COVID process, kind of dragging feet and helping with the distribution. We've seen our government, our governor spend, I don't know how many dollars taking folks from the border and sending them to Washington, D.C. That's our tax dollars that he's wasting doing this process. So this midterm election is critical for us here in Texas. We need every vote. One thing that I didn't say, and I know we're running out of time, but in Texas, what a lot of people don't realize is for us as African Americans, we are the state with the most African Americans in it. I don't know if most people realize that. We have a powerful opportunity in this state if we go out and vote. We can shift some things, and I promise you that is the reason why we've seen the changes in these laws, because they saw the changes that we were bringing about in the previous election. So all of our major cities have just about turned blue. A lot of the rural areas are still red, but we need to go out and vote. We don't need one person to stay home. We need every single person to hit that poll this year.
That is a perfect way to end. That's it.
All right.
So I want to thank everyone and share this with others to give them some tips on voting. They can see the website. There's so much they can see. So share this. I encourage you to go back and look at other previous episodes and share them as well. Join us again next week. I am Bronwyn Lucas with Black Mental Health is Black Health, a licensed professional counselor. If you find yourself in need of mental health help, reach out. I am not the only therapist. I can help you find one who might better fit you. But if I am the one for you, so be it. So thank you and look forward to seeing you again. And Reverend Angela, thanks. That was a great way to end.
All right.
Bye.
Be blessed. Thank you.